Welcome to the Grow Fast podcast, where we talk to leading sales, marketing, and biz dev professionals about how to accelerate sales, optimize marketing, and grow your business fast. Let's go. Hey, Victor, how are you today?
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm in the beautiful northwest of the United States. Where are you located at?
I'm in Madrid, Spain.
Oh,
Madrid.
How are things in Madrid?
Well, rainy, so it doesn't look like Madrid. Rainy and cold, but yeah, it's fine.
That's Seattle this time of the year. I got to say, though, I'm jealous of you. I mean, you have the history, the architecture, and some amazing football. All three of my boys are football players, or soccer players, as we say here. And yeah, if they could get on a plane and be in Madrid tomorrow, they would do that.
Yeah, definitely. Madrid is all about football. Absolutely. About
That's
soccer,
awesome.
Yeah, as you call it.
Yeah. What I'm really looking forward to this conversation because we're going to talk about some of the best practices related to responding to RFPs. But before we get into that, maybe you could give me the abbreviated version of your bio, like what were you doing before? And then why did you decide to move into a consulting role to help companies respond to RFPs?
Yeah, of course. So, well, yeah. So we know each other from the localization industry. I've been in the localization industry for ages. I started last century, as I say sometimes.
It's funny. I saw a comedian on Saturday Night Live recently, and he goes, I got to tell you guys, I'm from the 1900s.
Yeah, well, more or less. I started in the 1900s working in localization. I mean, I started in a very small company here in Spain, but with the luck of a company that was working with direct clients. And that's a little bit where I discovered localization. And then I moved to a big MLV. I moved to the Netherlands, and there I discovered, apart from localization, project management. Project management, I became PMP certified there. Then I discovered account management, and then I started to be involved in RFPs in the localization industry in all kinds of roles. From the Netherlands, I came back to Spain. I worked in a very specialized SLV in the game industry. I remained in the game industry, also in MLV lately for a few years, and then I decided to go back to being a consultant in RFPs. It's sort of a realization of, there's a big need here. I mean, I've been struggling with RFPs since my my first job, no, it's
since the 1900s.
Yes. The 1900s. No? So it's something that is there, that all companies need. That no matter if it's small companies, big companies, no matter the sector, no matter the industry, they need RFPs to respond to RFPs. If it's not RFPs, it's proposals, it's tenders, whatever it's RFIs. No matter, it doesn't matter how you call them, but they need to sell in written, apart from selling, of course, in face-to-face scenarios. And it's I really saw an opportunity there. I consider RFPs to be part of the sales process, of course, but also something that needs to be managed, that needs to be project managed to be able to respond well to those questions and requirements.
Yeah,
And
I mean, there's a lot of business, potential business out there, and if you don't have an effective response process, you can leave some of that business on the table.
Absolutely.
What we found was, I mean, you're coming at it from probably the project management and the process side, and MemoQ RFP is coming at it from the technology side. But that evolved from actually working at MemoQ, the translation management system company, in terms of revising both the processes and and then leveraging some of our existing technology. I'm really curious because I have we haven't talked ahead of time in terms of what your processes are, in terms of how you coach organizations to optimize their processes. But why don't we dig in and say, like, okay, before we get into the nitty-gritty, what do you see as the biggest challenges for small, medium-sized companies out there when they get an RFP? What is the challenge with responding to it?
The first challenge is who's going to take care of this. I think that's the
Not
first.
Me. I don't want to.
And that's where I come in. No, that's a little bit where I come in. Who's going to take care of this? And well, it's the first thing that you see in small and medium companies, the CEOs getting into this. In bigger companies, the salespeople that brought the opportunity, trying to manage the RFP, and that's the first challenge. And I think it's one of the first things that can be improved, to really have people, and there are people, professionals that can do this, that can manage this, which is a little bit the big part. And then, of course, it's all the data. And that's a little bit also where the technology is coming. So all the data, how are we going? There's a lot of data in companies. So lots of information, previous RFPs, information from different departments, information from different countries, maybe in different languages also, that need to be combined to and analyzed, and sometimes processed and prepared in order to be able to respond to those RFPs. And I think that's one of the big challenges that the proposed on RFP process has.
Well, I think you uncovered several challenges there, and let's just go through them in order. The first question that comes in, as you said, is like, who's going to respond? Who's responsible for this? Who's going to drive it? And I would even go back and before that and say, companies should decide this ahead of time. If you wait for the RFP to come in and then try to figure it out, it's almost too late, right? It's just going to stress your regular operations. I did quite a bit of consulting in the cybersecurity space. And by the time you get hacked, if you don't have a playbook in place, it's too late. You need to have something that you can pull off the shelf and say, okay, here's what we do in terms of our communications. Here's what we do in terms of notifying the regulators, and so on and so forth. With RFPs, you need to have that process, defined. That's what I'm hearing from you. You should have a process defined. When we talk about who, what have you seen? I mean, obviously, companies could outsource to somebody like yourself. But if you're just in there in terms of coaching them, what are your thoughts in terms of who actually should manage it? Should it be the salesperson? Should it be somebody from operations? Should it be a project manager? What are your thoughts?
To me, I mean, and as I mentioned it before, I fell in love with project management way back, and I think it's one of the key things, and it's defining who is who, in that process. So, who are the sponsors? Who are the stakeholders that need to participate in that? And I think that most of the time, the salespeople need to be involved, but as a sponsor and as a stakeholder, and not really the person
Project
pushing.
manager.
The
Right.
project manager pushing for that. So who needs to be there? And I think it depends on the company. I mean, there's no one size fits all answer to that, because it really depends on what we have. It depends on the size of the company, what type of departments they are, what type of RFP we are responding to. Why is there's a difference? But because if it's a big company that has different departments, different verticals, different things that need to be combined. The IT need to be involved, operations need to be involved, and then you can also have different types of operations that need to be involved in the RFP.
Finance and HR.
Finance, HR.
Yes, exactly.
So that someone needs to coordinate that. And that's a little bit why the RFP process is so cumbersome in many companies, because there's the need to organize that. And the poor sales team is normally the only ones that are really pushing for that, and are really eager to get the responses, and struggling to get everybody on board to get the operation. So you need first, yeah.
Yeah, but no, I was going to say, salespeople, you really want them out selling. You don't want them doing project managing something like this, right? And going around the organization and collecting information from all these people who, by the way, a lot of times look at your request as an annoyance, because it probably hasn't been properly communicated to them about how important this is, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I'm in total agreement with you. If you can have a dedicated team or person, and that's what they do. The other thing that I think you're probably going to get to is that, a salesperson, they might get 2 or 3 RFPs a year. They're not going to build up that expertise of, putting together the response. But if you have a dedicated person, they're doing that all the time. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And people used to set what the importances and the key factors that make an RFP successful. And I think, first the analysis, and getting the analysis of what is being asked exactly? I mean, of course, the salesperson is going to be there because it is normally the one that has been discussing with the client, looking at the options, asking the right questions. Sometimes it's also the company itself. So it could be the CEO of the company, it could be the owner, it could be the operations manager, where you have to get all these essence of, okay, what is the added value? What is exactly the difference of working with this company, working with another company? Trying to get that information is super key in order to be able to pass on that those essentials to the client, and making sure that that the RFP response is going to really stand out. So that's one of the key things, and that's also one of the beauties of this thing. I mean, it was funny when I was mentioning to my mother, okay, what are you going to do now? I mean, the RFPs. Well, what is that? I mean, it was these questionnaires that you have to answer. Oh, that is boring. And I said, well, it could
business,
be
Mom.
it could be boring, but there's also a certain beauty to it, especially when you're consulting with different companies, because you have the opportunity to see different approaches, different people doing different types of things, and that's a little bit one of the as I'm saying, the beauty of it. Trying to understand, okay, this is what you do, how you're doing it, understanding how you're going to do it, and to going back to the first question that you had on the preparation side, it's guiding them a little bit on finding what is their essence, what is the really their added value, and trying to help the companies get that, find that differentiator that is going to make them stand out together with them, and be able to transpose that in a project, in the RFP response, and in the documentation that they have to provide in order to get the projects or the programs.
In your experience, who is the best person, or what is the best way to decide, should we go ahead and respond to this RFP? Because sometimes an RFP comes in and you're like, you know what, we probably are not going to win this. They're looking for something different, or maybe they already have a vendor already in mind and they're just doing this as a formality. Somebody has to decide. And if you have a project manager, they might not be the person who understands the sales opportunity as much as, I mean, they're very good at the response part, but in terms of the business opportunity side. So what's your advice on that?
Yeah, this is the famous go no go decision on RFP processes. I mean, that's a very important one. I mean, there has to be a portfolio of projects and a strategic decision on responding or not responding to an RFP. That normally comes from really the executives, the decision makers in the company, that need to have these overview of different projects and opportunities, because indeed there are RFPs that are maybe it's not the best idea to spend all the time that you have to spend in responding to RFP, and sometimes even strategically responding to all RFPs that come into your company could be problematic, in the sense of, okay, I committed to this, but then I'm losing the other opportunities that I could have pursued instead. And that decision needs to come normally from the C-suite or the executive team, that needs to decide a little bit that part. In certain companies, it could be operations. The operations that has an overview of the capacities, an overview of the strategic goals that they have.
I was going to say, but if you get an RFP, and sometimes the documents can be rather lengthy and somewhat complicated, and somebody has to distill down what are they actually going to buy and what's our position here. And if you send that document up to the C-suite, in some organizations, they'll be like, "Hey, man, we've got a lot of stuff on our table already, our plate already," and so. Sometimes I would advise the business development manager who brings it in. Okay, is this something that you want to pursue? If so, you make the case to me, pretending that I'm the C-suite, as why we should invest our resources in this. Okay, send me the summary. What's the opportunity size? What's our potential win there? I mean, is that something that you see at all?
Yeah, it's. I think it's good advice. I mean, I'm not going to say that I see it all the time. Normally, the idea is let's respond to everything, no matter what it is, which is a little bit a pity. And sometimes it's let's respond, let's get this done as soon as possible, which is normally not the right approach. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's definitely a very good advice. I mean, I think just to make the case, to be able to have that portfolio of projects or portfolio of opportunities, and being sure that that portfolio is well managed and the opportunities are classified and strategically aligned with what the company wants to do.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is RFP comes in, you have to have a go, no go decision. Then once you go, you want to move the responsibility to a dedicated person who has some experience responding to RFPs. So we'll call them an RFP project manager or just the project owner. From that point, what are some other best practices? If you are coaching that project manager, and because they've got to go out, like, as you mentioned, to many different subject matter experts in the company and collect information. And sometimes those subject matter experts are busy. Well, oftentimes they're busy, but sometimes they'll say, I just responded to this similar question 2 months ago. Why do I have to redo this? And they might get some pushback. So what advice would you give a person in that role?
Yeah, in that sense, I mean, it will be purely project management, no project management, which is follow up, which is planning, which is transmitting, as we were discussing, no, transmitting the importance of responding to an RFP. And then, of course, there's the technology. I think that's a little bit where the technology can help, and that's a little bit where a portfolio of RFPs can help. No, if you have this information centralized, if you have this information available in a certain place, the reuse of that information can definitely alleviate the efforts in a company. And that's I guess it's a little bit where MemoQ RFP can also help. I mean, in centralizing this information, and that in order to advise the person managing that process. I mean, it's purely project management at the end of the day. It's managing expectations, managing stakeholders, being able to plan correctly the execution of that project, which is the RFP response, and be able to manage that, and explaining the dependencies to that person. In that case that you were explaining, you were putting as an example. I mean, explaining, okay, I need this because then we have to do this, and then we have to do that, and then we have to go ahead with the other review processes that we have to do. So that's communication at the end of the day. Communicate, and explain why.
Exactly. I think that's all super good advice. What have you seen in terms of foreign language RFPs and best ways to manage that?
What I normally see is information that exists in different languages, which is a little bit also where this synergy between the localization industry, the translation industry, and the RFP proposal industry comes in. I mean, it's super interesting to see that in certain regions, for example, this is not that common. I mean, or in certain size of companies. I mean, of course, yeah, you have regions where, well, it's local RFPs. They respond in one language. All the information is in one language. But the moment that you just go up in size a little bit, normally you have a multilingual content all over the place. Also, opportunities coming from different countries to be able to respond to different stakeholders or different clients in different languages. And the need exists, of course, in many companies to have that centralized, translated, in order to be able to have the French SME that is the IT guy that has the control of everything, communicating or coordinated with the production guy who is in Germany and who has the processes all very well documented. And then we have the marketing guys in Spain that have some information, but not all of it. And be able to centralize that information in one language and be able to respond in the target language of that RFP is really an important step, and one of the big challenges, of course, of especially big companies that are in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, we see this a lot in Europe, also, in Canada as well, with French, Canadian, and English. But, in the last year and a half, MemoQ has responded to RFPs in at least 5 different languages that I know of. And the challenge, and because, it's, you may get the inbound RFP in English. You might not. We've received them in Finnish, for example. And then we've had to decide, well, is it go, no go? Well, how do we decide if it's go, no go? Because we've got a finished document that's 500 pages long in front of us, right? And so we have to do that evaluation. And we have a process in terms of doing that. And then, as you said, you've got to collect all that information. For us, the information that we collect typically is always in English, but then we have to submit it in that target language of Finnish. I think we've done Italian, Spanish, and French. I'm probably missing one more, but so what advice would you give to companies in terms of different options? A document comes in 300-400 pages or it's even 50 pages, whatever it is, in Finnish. Let's use that one. Mm-hmm. What would you do?
Well, the first thing is to understand a little bit what is the summary from the person bringing the opportunity. Okay, what is the strategic goal here? What are we going to achieve with this? Give us a summary of this. And then, of course, the RFP experts or the RFP or the person appointed to manage RFP needs to understand what are the requirements, what is in that RFP document, and we need to translate that. There's no other option. If the rest of the team doesn't speak that language, it's something that definitely needs to be translated and maybe curated first. So maybe there's no need to translate everything, but to decide which parts can be translated or need to be translated on a first place in order to be able to take that decision, that go no go decision. So the curation of that document. But of course, you need some help from someone speaking the language in order to curate that document and be able to make a decision.
Yeah, we've been fortunate that we've been able to leverage machine translation to translate the summary and then evaluate, does this look interesting for us or not? And then follow up with the company or the organization that's issuing the RFP and ask them questions in English to get clarification and drill down. And typically, even though the document, they may be requesting it, it could be a government agency. A lot of government agencies require local language responses, but they're perfectly capable of responding to questions in English and get those clarifying answers in place and then make that go-no decision. And we've typically seen that machine translation for the questionnaire typically works. But the response document has to be perfect, right? And so you may start with MT and do post editing, or maybe you just go right to humans. I mean, have you seen a variety of different processes there?
Yeah, I think MT definitely is part of is a key essential part there in order to be able to do this thing. Then in the matter of responding, I think there's two approaches. No, there's the approach of really getting an SME in the type of RFP that can speak that target language, that can help you get that. I think that's one of the ways to do this, and then. The other way to do this is to have someone that is a copywriter, that is able to transmit that information that is gathered in the company or in the process of the RFP, and a person that you trust that is going to be able to transmit that in that language. So there's two approaches, and I think it really depends on the type of RFP, the type of the severity of the RFP, the speed that you need, of course, sometimes to respond, which is RFP sometimes that have very tight schedules. So if you get that expert in the process, of course, that could be an ideal situation, even if they have to transmit what exactly your company is doing and have that help. And if not, as I'm saying, also as in localization, for example, you look for the best translators. Sometimes when doing the RFP responses, you have to try to find the best copywriters and in that, or proposal writers in that language in order to help you. And of course, you need to be able to transmit the information, transmit the what you want to have in that RFP to that person. And then one of the key things, I think, especially in very complex RFPs, in order to review those stages, you can back translate. It's also another technique. Back translate with MT, back translate with really, if it's needed, with a professional translator. That's also another approach. Back translate and make sure that what is being transmitted at the end of the target language is there as you want it to.
So, I think those are some great suggestions. And for people who are not from the localization industry, MT is machine translation. I should have said that from the beginning. So in machine translation is becoming incredibly more powerful and more frequently used. But you do have to keep an eye on things because it's not perfect. You mentioned the importance of copywriting or having those type of skills in the response process. What are your thoughts in terms of, do the RFP issuers, they want just a pure factual response, or is it important to put kind of a copywriting spin on it? What are your thoughts?
Well, of course, it depends on the RFP, I would say, but there's always a part of the RFP where there is some essence and some important transmission of that added value that needs to be there. So normally in the executive summary, you have that possibility to use some copywriting skills or some copywriter advice there. Of course, in the more technical part, normally there's no need for that, and actually it could be counterproductive if you're trying to do that. So you have to analyze all the RFP parts and be sure where you need to explain those things. So the executive summary is the first one that comes to mind. The conclusion. Of course, RFPs can be very different. You can have from one page proposal that needs to be submitted for something to a very complex RFP involving many different aspects. So again, it's a little bit analysis, making sure to understand which parts can have a more creative process, more creative output, to say better, more creative output, and which parts are really factual, really technical, really where you really need to go to the point and be able to make sure that you are addressing each one of those responses the correct way.
Yeah, again, great observations and advice there. Let me ask you, because earlier you talked about leveraging, the portfolio of RFPs or responses that you've put together in the past. And we know that there are some tools out there that help to kind of automate that. And obviously MemoQ RFP is developing a platform like that. But aside from that, I've seen companies that, will just collect their files, for example, store their files and then go back and do, copy and search and, copy and paste, things like that. Do you have any suggestions in terms of how to organize your previous responses if you're not using one of these tools or platforms, and, and how to kind of streamline that process? Because a lot of times the questions aren't an exact match, right? So how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think that's where technology is really going to make a big change in responding to RFPs. I mean, the AI is probably going to help a lot on that, and I think that's one of the key things. Because even if looking into this, if you don't have a specific person working on RFPs, it's very difficult, no matter how organized your content management is. It's quite difficult to just understand which question was similar to this one, and then I could reuse this information. So at the end, of course, it's having a centralized content management system is the ideal solution. But even though it's very complicated to be able to leverage correctly all the questions. And I think that the technology is definitely going to help with that, and AI is definitely going to help with that. That curation of processes, being able to get those very similar questions that need to be reviewed. And that's, I think, it's one of the shifts that is going to happen in the RFP proposal process. That is already here. I mean, sometimes it's already here.
But a lot of companies maybe aren't aware of these platforms, or maybe they don't have the budget, and so they're just using, hey, we've done RFPs before. Where are those files? Some of them are better at organizing them. For those companies, what advice would you give in terms of how to organize their previously submitted RFPs, and then how to validate? Because, if you're the RFP manager, you're not going to be able to tell whether these responses regarding your IT security are up to date. I mean, you know what I mean? Because you're not an IT security specialist. Likewise, with some of the company's financials, you're going to have to kind of validate them. You can't just copy and paste everything. Mm-hmm. So any recommendations or suggestions there?
I think, again, communication and knowing your company, knowing what is the status of things, and involving them. And I mean, maybe with a better organization, when you have this situation, it's just a matter of validating those questions, making sure that those SMEs in your company are validating those questions. No, as I'm saying, to organize the content. I mean, it's at the end, have a content management system as clear as possible, have similar RFPs in one place, having also the analysis and the post-mortem of those RFPs, whether if you won the RFP, if you lost the RFP, what information is there, trying to tag as good as possible those responses, and be able to respond to it. And then, again, I think the technology is really going to help with that difficult process.
Awesome. Yeah, you bring up a good point of tracking. And let me ask you this, because we track all of our RFPs, win or lose. And also we try to, know if we did lose it, why. And also we want to know what the potential dollar amount is. Sometimes it's not clear what the potential, dollar amount is. And some organizations, they won't tell you why you lost. In those scenarios, though, there are ways that you can kind of probe and try to collect information. What advice would you give?
Yeah, I think, well, it's true. I mean, sometimes you don't know why you lost it. Sometimes you know that, well, there's a percentage of chance of getting there. You cannot win all RFPs. I mean, that's definitely something that you have to know when we respond to RFPs. There could be factors that you don't control, factors that you can control. The really important thing of RFPs is to learn from them. I mean, and that's of course, when you have won it, you are very happy. But there's also an exercise in trying to see, okay, what made us win this RFP? Can we identify exactly which part of the RFP was really key in that decision process? It all starts also with the questioning in the beginning. I mean, at the end, questioning the client with the importance, depending on how the RFP is structured, how they are asking the questions, normally also give hints of what is going to be really important here. There's the danger sometimes that you don't learn from those responses, from the process, and that I think that's really one of the essential lessons learned that you have to have in the RFP, to learn from them, to be able to see what worked, what didn't work, repeat what works, avoid what is not working.
Well, I mean, you can get some good market intelligence too, because, for example, if you are consistently losing because price, maybe you got to look at your pricing strategy. If you're consistently losing because you don't have SOC 2 security credentials, then you may have to look at that as an investment. Hey, if we invest in the X number of dollars it takes to be SOC 2 compliant, how much business can we win? Maybe it's a connector for a specific platform. Oh, you don't have a connector for, AEM, Adobe Experience Manager. Well, then we're not going to do business with you. And you see that on 4 different RFPs. You know what? Maybe you should invest in that AEM connector, right?
Exactly. That's really the lessons learned part that is super important. No, it's where there's nothing better than getting the RFP of your ideal client to understand, okay, what are they looking at? What do they want to see? And be able to match that if it makes sense strategically for your company. But yeah, it could be IT, it could be insurance, it could be people size. Sometimes you see very small companies trying to get to projects that are too big for them.
Or they want offices in multiple countries around the world, and you have an office in 2 countries, and they're like, we that's just what they're looking at, right?
Yeah, and sometimes you can just get a lesson from it. I'm like, okay, so maybe if I have an office, a sales office somewhere, and a small production office somewhere, then I would be able to apply to these RFPs and have a chance to winning them. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things that, I like to follow up with RFP issuers one, I like to reach out to them a lot in advance because there's typically a window where you can ask clarifying questions, right? And, I put my sales hat on and I say the more often or the more frequently I can communicate with somebody and have a face-to-face contact, even if it's just on a video call, they get to know me, I get to know them, and you'll get information, but you also start to develop that relationship. Typically, these people are in procurement and they're immune to relationships. No, I'm just joking about that. But you can get information and you can kind of position yourself by asking smart, intelligent questions, because sometimes they may have issued an RFP and not realized, wow, we didn't ask the appropriate question there. Maybe for this industry, we need to kind of tweak it. And then on the follow-up, I like to ask, because if you just say, why did we lose? That's kind of hard. But if you can ask, for example, and this is almost the same thing, but you can say, I'm trying to learn here. What could we have done better? Is there anything that we could have done better? Could you, and sometimes if you take that kind of an approach, you might get a little bit more information. I mean, end of the day, most people, even in procurement, are human beings. And if they feel like you've made an effort, to kind of reach out to them, and a lot of times you'll get some valuable insights in return.
Very valuable insight that you can get in your documentation that you can learn from. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's.
What are you seeing in terms of some of these like hard requirements? For like, you must have this in order to qualify. For example, is it like, security requirements like NIST or SOC 2, or are you seeing things around ESG, or diversity, equity, and inclusion? Are these becoming increasingly important, or is it just something that they put there, as a formality, or are they really becoming important?
I think it really depends on the industry. I mean, it really depends on what industries you are targeting. Of course, anything related to diversity and inclusion is starting to be important. Is there in many RFPs, but there, of course, it really depends on the industry, on what exactly, because RFPs can be of anything. I mean, you can work from architecture RFPs that want to get into another country and want to place themselves to a locksmith that wants to do to put lockers in a mall. No, so to give some examples, extreme examples. No, to maybe the ones that are first coming to mind, no more IT related. So I really think it depends on the industry. It depends on the size of the project or the opportunity, and it can be very, very diverse. So I would not say there's anything really standing out. It really depends. Yeah, I think it really depends.
I would think, for example, in Europe, GDPR is probably kind of, are you GDPR compliant? If you're doing any kind of B2C, well, even B2B these days, in terms of protecting the information of your employees or your vendors, customers, and so on and so forth, I'm sure you probably see GDPR related questions.
There's always, true. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's when you come to the essentials, those are always there. GDPR, how are you protecting your files? Can be, of course, the level of maturity of the company will completely make a different way of approaching that, but definitely there's some essentials that need to be there, and especially if you go to public companies,
Sure.
etc. Those are really going to be there. So you better be compliant with those things, because if not, you're really it's going to be a no for sure. Yeah.
So let me ask you, if I was a small, medium-sized company, or even have an enterprise or level organization, and I want to optimize my RFP response process, I want to build my virtual team and probably appoint some person as a RFP project manager. I can see a couple different skills there. You need the project management skills, but there are also specialty RFP writing skills. Okay. And those are kind of different things. You don't really want your project manager to be also your writer, typically. What advice would you give for project managers who want to get better at responding to RFPs? And also writers who want to get better, because there are courses, there are associations, newsletters, etc. What advice would you give?
I think for the project management part, the first is to just imagine what the ideal process is going to be. Prepare a project plan for it, and stick to that, and at least have a basis. And in fact, that's the important thing. There are some essentials. I mean, at the end, have to analyze. Make sure what we're going to respond, what are we going to execute, how we're going to format it, how are we going to review it, and how we're going to submit it. Those very essential things sometimes it's not are not even there sometimes, and I think it's where you have to start. Then, of course, in terms of writing and copywriting, I think it all again it will depend a little bit on the industry, and there normally the skill is accessible, are easier maybe to get outside of the company, being able to transmit that to people that you trust, that can help you with that writing process, that can help you transmit.
So an external consultant, basically.
Of course, yeah. Sometimes it's a good option to get that, an external consultant that it's not going to manage the project, but it's just going to help you get that in the proper language for the sections of the RFP response that you need them for.
Awesome. If people wanted to learn more about RFP, responding to RFPs, are there any associations, workshops, or schools that you would recommend?
There are very big good books on RFP responses. I mean, at the end of the day, it's more knowing your industry, knowing what is required in your organization. Project management, of course, there are very good books on RFP and even on RFP writing, but there's really a variety of them. And in the States, for example, there's quite a few associations on RFP responses. Very good consulting firms that can help you there. But I would just start with the basis. And I think that one, with the basic things, I mean, just pure project management, pure transmitting and reusing the content. And that would be my first idea. Because if you try to become the guru of the RFP process, it's probably going to take you to a path that it's not exactly what you're looking for. You're looking for agility. You're looking for speed in responses. You're looking for knowing where to gather the information, and that's a little bit what companies need. More than really becoming the marketing copywriter expert, or that will get you the ideal RFP proposal. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, last question. Want to wrap this up on a positive note here. Tell me the story about the biggest or most interesting or surprising RFP win that you've been involved with. Of course, you can change the names and the industries if you want, but explain how it came in, how your team came together, handled it, and what were the steps?
Yeah, I think one of the key things, is and the beauty that I was mentioning in the beginning of the conversation, the beauty of seeing different companies. When I started looking at RFPs, my idea, of course, was to get into the markets that I know. It could be localization, it could be video games, it could be IT, it could be software, and sometimes you just have opportunities that you don't even think about. These locksmith examples I was mentioning in the conversation is just a real example. A locksmith in Spain trying to get into a big RFP for them, trying to put master locks in a mall, and you see those things, and suddenly you just realize, okay, I'm learning so many things about keys, about things like that really don't. I was really not really expecting even to that there exists. There's an ISO for locks. Oh my God, and we have to be compliant with those things. So those things are really the fun when you get into that. I think that's one of the interesting things of seeing the differences from the different companies and industries, and be able to provide value to that process, understanding how they do it, and be able to transmit that in the RFP process. Yeah.
No, that's awesome, and I love that too, because you're right. It's funny because I've been in the local industry off and on for quite a long time. And, and I've consulted in a couple different industries, but it's really a pretty narrow slice of what's going on in the whole world. And so my concept or perspective of RFPs is like, this is it. And I was doing research, or we were doing research for MemoQ RFP in terms of markets and industries that we wanted to reach out to. And I went to some different state portals and then different private industry portals. And I was looking for, can I find a pattern of what industries are offering the most types of, or the most RFPs? And the reality is just like every industry out there, it was amazing. And I came across one in the state of California for rat mitigation. So they were sending an RFP for pest exterminators, but they called it rat mitigation. And I just thought that was, I would have never guessed that they would actually have an RFP process for that. But I think that's a couple of good points. One is you have opportunity to learn, but two, RFPs are everywhere. And so from a response consultant perspective and from a technology provider, that's a pretty good thing to have in front of us there. There's a pretty wide market.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the key things. Just understand the moment that you just understand that, there's opportunities that are different from what I've been doing in the last 20 years. And all those people that I was not even considering, now I can consider them as potential clients. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, Victor, if any of our listeners or viewers wanted to reach out and get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, so we have a website. It's eProyecto.com. Of course, my LinkedIn is also available, and that's a way to reach me. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll put links to both those in the show notes. Mm-hmm. And hey, I really want to thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Very interesting conversation. Cheers. Thank you for your time.